so you will get a copy of this as well. So welcome everyone to this. This is a talk about consciousness of color consciousness, I would say, is about and my name is Mark Wentworth. I've been working with color for about 36 years, studying it, working with it, and equally part of my love is about film and how color plays an important part in film. And I'm going to start sharing with you a PowerPoint just so we get to this. Okay, and then we'll go through it. I'll just put this up there. So, yep, we've got that. Okay, so a bit about me. So, like I said, my name is Mark Wentworth. I've been working with color for 36 years professionally and studying it for that length of time. But probably it started way, well, not it probably, it did start way before then. And this image really sums up my early childhood story, because when I was about maybe 4 or 5, I remember actually seeing a rainbow for the first time, and it's such a vivid memory. And it was caused by when I visited my grandmother, and she'd had some glass beads on the ceiling. Some glass beads on the windowsill, and the light was shining through them and creating rainbows on the ceiling. And I just remember being totally captivated by these colors, and it was as though they were kind of living, and it was like I could see all these stories inside them, and they just had such a profound effect. And then my other love of being at my grandmother's was that she would sit and read comics to me, and my favorite comics were ones that were absolutely filled with color. But the visual images were just amazing. I remember the depth and the images, the color in those. And of course, when you're about that age, you don't think, oh, this is going to be my kind of future career, or this is going to be my vocation. And then when I was about 9 or 10, I was at middle school, high school, I think that is in other terminology. And I remember just sitting down. We had a typewriter at school, gives you an idea of how long ago that was. And I just sat there and I typed a whole script. I typed a film script, and I knew exactly how to lay it out. I knew to actually put in sort of directions about the kind of backgrounds of the stories of the characters. There was 4 people in the film, in the script, and I wrote it in purple ink. That was the color that was on the typewriter. And I think what I remember about that is I would think I was more upset because no one believed me that I just knew how to do it. And everyone kind of, so I think that's the bit I remember. I don't remember much else about it. And I would carry this script around in a plastic bag. And to this day, I don't know what happened to that script. Anyway, so it's always been there. And then when I was at kind of school, a lot of my school reports said, yeah, Mark would be doing really good if, he could calm his overactive imagination a little bit. And sometimes I think I would love to go back to my school and find some of those teachers, if they're still around, and say, hey, it was because of my active imagination that I'm doing what I do now. So part of my work with color on let's say on a personal level, is helping people kind of find out, who they are born to be and what kind of story they're here to tell. Now, of course, also then I trained very briefly in TV and film, in makeup, in special effects. I did my training at Richmond Theatre. And I was very lucky to have been trained to work with George Frost. And he was coming up to retirement. And he had been makeup artist on films like African Queen. He'd worked with Marilyn Monroe when she was in the UK. He'd worked on the early James Bond films. So it was, even though I didn't follow that career, it was worth doing it for meeting George and hearing all his different stories. And then somewhere along the way, I met people who were doing color, and that's when I decided this is what I want to do. And it's been 36 years ever since. And so through color, it's almost I was able to bring my like 9, 10-year-old self of writing a script, bringing that together with my love of color. And what I notice is that I talk about color as a visual narrative, and that sometimes, well, I think most of the time, most people are what I call colorblind, not physically, but not physiologically, but emotionally and psychologically. Because the only time people really become color conscious is when they either choose the colors they're going to wear, they choose to decorate, or indeed, if we work in the creative industry where you are using color. But apart from that, the genuine populace is pretty colorblind. And part of my bit is to make people a little bit more color conscious and help them to say, oh, why is it I choose this color today? Why did I choose to wear this color today? And why is it that it doesn't look right on this day, and yet it feels right on that day? And again, what I also along the way, for about 23 of those 36 years, I have studied depth psychology, which includes things like kind of archetypes and the work of Carl Jung. So I very much describe my work as bringing color to life through dreams, drama, film, and storytelling, because we're in those mediums, we're using color all the time to tell a story. Kind of some of the stuff that when I was helping people to become, let's say, a little bit more color conscious, I would do some dating shows, TV programs of going into people's houses, looking around the colors they decorated with and the colors they had in their wardrobe to see what story they were telling, because it's very unconscious. We just think, oh, I like this color, I don't like that color. And that's why when people, you may have seen in the description where I say that when someone says, oh, I really hate this color, I really hate yellow, for example, part of what I want to say is, well, have you ever thought the feeling might be mutual? Because yellow may feel the same way about you too. And so what I do is help people to build, let's say, a relationship with color, because most of the time, people's they don't have a relationship with color because it's very one-sided. It's, I like this color, I don't like that color, but never thinking about it from a different perspective. What about the other way? What about the other way around? What about from color's perspective? Also, part of my work is I also work with psychodrama. I practice as a psychodramatist, which was created by Jacob Moreno, which is very much about giving everything a voice. If you've heard of like kind of role reversal or empty chair or anything like that, then you will have experienced aspects of psychodrama. So that's kind of my story, but in relation to color. But I want to tell you a little bit more about color. So color is a language unto itself. Carl Jung, when his patients would come to see him, he would have them paint with as many colors as possible. And he would pay attention to not only the colors they put on the page, but also the colors they didn't put on the page. Because for him, the colors that people used, they were almost like painting and using the colors that would show their unique prescription. Now, the thing about Jung is he also introduced the aspect of archetypes. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of, certainly in film, the hero's journey is one that's used a lot in film. There's always the hero archetype, and it's always you can always see in a film when the hero's archetype or the hero's journey is being used, because the beginning, it either shows you the protagonist in their natural environment, in their normal environment, then something happens which then sets them on a journey, and the hero's journey is almost like circular, because then it always eventually they go through all these different trials and they get support along the way, and then eventually they come full circle, and either they've learned something from the beginning, or they've resolved something which benefits everyone. So archetypes are very present in film, and the way, because they're stories. Archetypes are patterns of behavior. So if you say to someone, for example, oh, she is a very good mother, you don't need any words, because as soon as you say mother, you've got the mother archetype. It's universal. And then there's variations on a theme of that. So color is one of those things. Color, from Jung's perspective, was considered an archetype because it's universal. We may see it differently and relate to it differently, but ultimately we're all connecting and relating in the same way. It's just some things get in the way. So color is a universal language, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Now, most people get stuck at the point of color is just visual, but it is way more than that. It triggers all of the other senses too. And I don't know whether it's on here. Nope. And let me go back a bit. So, kind of look, and an example of this is look through one of these glossy magazines, find a picture, an ad, or look for an ad of a perfume or aftershave that you do not know the smell of. Look at the colors, and then simply write down or describe how you think that would smell based on the color alone. And then go smell it. Then go search out that perfume. And I guarantee you, about 85% you'll be accurate, because color is so much more than just the visual. It has a physiological effect. So when we're looking at color, we're absorbing these frequencies through our eyes. So it's creating a physiological hormonal change in the body. So we're having a emotional response to it as well. It also, there's musicians who will tell you there is something called the color symphony, that sometimes when people play music, they see color. Color is a communication tool. Equally, color has an effect on the physical body, and color is an amazing storyteller. It's also an amazing time traveler. Think of for example, when people will like kind of like either a piece of music, you can be driving your car, you have a piece of music comes on, a song comes on in the car, and immediately it transports you back in time to a specific memory, a specific event. Likewise with smell, maybe you smell something or a certain smell, and it immediately takes you back to a memory, maybe of your grandmother or something like that. Color does exactly the same thing, but it's a lot more subtle about it. It's not so obvious. And part of my role with color is I talk about being like an advocate, a lawyer of color, is because color is always innocent. We tend to make it guilty. And I'm telling you all of this to hopefully so that you start to view color and look at color in a different way, just in day-to-day life. Look at the colors that you have around you, and you say, well, why do I have these colors? Why don't I like this color? beyond whether you would wear them, whether you would decorate with them, that's something completely different, you know, but start to become more color conscious. And then you'll start to understand how it's such an important part in film. So color is, so in the first circle, in the inner circle, we have all these different perceptions with color. The red circle is P, that's personal. We all have personal color stories, you know, from different experiences. Maybe we had something difficult happen to us at a certain time. It was a highly emotional event, and maybe we forget the event, but there was a specific color around at the time. And from that moment on, we'll say, I hate that color. I don't like that color. Because color is frequency, vibration, it's a light frequency, and it will very often anchor different emotional states. So we have our personal color stories. Then the second, so the orange circle, is the F is for family, but that can also stand for groups and tribes that we belong to. You know, in families, very often there's family color stories. Like I've worked with people and they say, oh yes, I don't like green, I will never wear green. And you say, well, why is that? It's like, oh, my mother, my grandmother, or my father said, oh, it's unlucky. We always believe it's an unlucky color. Again, a simple one would be in a group or a tribe would be like a sports team. Very often say, I love this color, but I don't like this color. It's because it's the opposing team. That can be, and equally kind of when it comes to groups and tribes, color actually gives us an identity. It says, I belong. This is how I, look at, there's political parties, there's sports clubs, anything like that gives you a sense of belonging. Then the yellow circle, the C, is about cultural color associations. Let's say, for example, in Europe, it's very traditional for a bride to get married in white, whereas in the Far East, not at all. That's the color you wear in mourning, and red is the color you wear to get married. So that's color, that's cultural color associations. So you have to break through all of these until you get to the green circle, which is universal. And that's where we all have pretty much the same response to color. And how do we know that? And that is because in various experiments, they put colored light onto the person's back or the backs of their knees so the person can't actually see the color. And then they measure things like kind of blood pressure, heart rate, and how the person is feeling in general. And the very simplest ones, the most obvious ones, is red increases heart rate, blood pressure, etc. Whereas green and blue actually does the opposite and calms it down. And that's without the person actually seeing the color. And this is why equally blind people who've never had any sight, have an amazing sense of color. They will tell you that each color has, firstly, they will tell you it feels different. I've been to, let's say, with a blind person to their wardrobe and saying, yes, I want to choose this and choose this. And I'll say, why is that? And they'll say, because they feel right together. And when you look at the color combinations, they work perfectly. I would say, I always say that there's probably quite a few sighted people who could benefit from using that same technique. And it's always thinking, nature never, ever makes a color mistake. And for me, color is light made visible. How we see things, it's light, light is kind of invisible, but it's when we put something in front that color becomes visible. So color as a visual storyteller. Each color, as you've heard me say, each color has a story to tell. Each shade, tone, and where it's placed requires an action, an adjustment of behavior, and brings about a change in mood. all at the speed of light. And if you're looking at something, you are absorbing that light frequency, and it's creating a physiological change within your body. And that's why, in one way, I believe that when we pay attention to the colors in film. So let's go back. Is, was it Fox and MGM? They had their, and I was looking for a picture of it. I couldn't see it. Find the one I was looking for. But at the beginning, there had I think it's Fox, 20th Century Fox. That's it. And those kind of blues and purples, and is it MGM? No, MGM had the line, and anyway, they had sort of blues and purples. Now, if you think about it, when we watch a film, or when we watch anything in visual, for a period of time, we are suspending our daily life. We are entering into the story, the life of the story of the film, if we talk in film. And therefore, when we're focused on these colors, the reason they used the blues and the purples at the beginning was because those blues and purples, when we're surrounded by blues and purples and lilacs, they tend to take us, they have the reaction on the body where they calm us down and they make us less aware of our everyday environment. They take us into another world. And in a way, when we're absorbing these purples and these blues, we're actually suspending. It's like saying, okay, for a period of time, like I said, we're entering into a different realm. We're in, I was looking back, and the earliest of use of color in film, before the film color as we know it now, when they used to hand paint the film reel, was back in I think I found it in something like 1900 or 1895, and I'll talk more about that a bit later on. So color tells a story. It creates, now if you think, if I'm looking at a screen, I'm absorbing all of this light and these different frequencies, these different color frequencies, which, as I've said to you, is actually having a physiological effect on my body, which in turn is changing different chemical, it's having a chemical reaction to what I'm seeing. And if we consciously work with the colors, then we enhance the aspect of the story, which again, I'll tell you more about in just a second. Now, one of the films I gave myself and some students from the University in Mexico City, we did a presentation at a color conference a couple of years ago about this film, but specifically about the lilac scarf. In the paper was called Color as a Visual Narrative, or it was called The Lilac Scarf, Color as a Visual Narrative in the film Far From Heaven. Now, if you've not seen this film, from the point of, certainly from the color perspective, it's made with Technicolor. It's made, Todd Haynes used original Technicolor. And just a little side bit, if you're in the UK, we do have there is the British Color Association, or the Color Group, and every year there is, they paused it a bit unfortunately during lockdown. Every year there is something called Color in Film Conference, and it's usually towards the end of March to coincide with International Color Day. And it is literally everyone who is connected in some form, shape, or kind of whatever with color in film, that all gathered together for this conference. And it's part funded, sponsored by BFI. And it's actually on South Bank. Anyway, what was interesting in the first one, that the British film industry's response to, I think it was when the US started using color in film for the first time in, I think it was either the 40s or 50s. I'm not exactly sure, but whenever that was, the response, which makes me smile because I think is, oh, terribly British film industry, their response was, it'll never catch on. It's an American thing. Anyway, it did catch on, but Far From Heaven, brilliant film to watch from the point of view of color as a visual narrative. So this is one of the early scenes, and it is Julianne Moore who's on the right. She won an Oscar for this role, and you could say that she's the main protagonist of the story. And here she is with a group of friends, and what makes her that a little bit different is she is, as you can see, she's wearing a lilac scarf, which somehow actually is totally different to the rest of the colors. That you could say that they're all autumnal colors apart from the lilac scarf. Yep, the story of the lilac scarf, yes. And if we look at the symbolism of lilac, it's fantasy dreaming, not afraid to go against the norm, realms of daydreams, but equally on its other side, because the symbolism, go back to where we were talking about, I was talking about Jung archetypes, color is an archetype. So the difference between a sign and a symbol, a sign is, let's say, a traffic stop sign. There's no other interpretation other than what it shows. Stop. A symbol can mean many different things in different ways to different people. Overall, though, there is a symbolic language of color. So what I work with and what I teach people about is the symbolism of color. So in here, we say the symbolism of lilac is when we surround people with lilac, for example, they tend to disassociate, they go into fantasy, daydreaming. And equally, part of the symbolism of lilac and violet, of which lilac is a part, is very much about standing out from the crowd. Now, what's interesting is where we first meet Kathy Whitaker, that's the Julianne Moore's character's name, is she's standing outside. It sets the scene normally, and then we see her with her friends, and they're reading from a newspaper, from the local newspaper, and it's saying that because it's set in the 1950s, and there's still the aspects of segregation, of Black people living in different parts of the city. It's set on the East Coast, and her best friend, who is in the excuse me, who's in the green coat, which is an interesting, we'll talk about in a moment, is reading from the paper because when the reporter was there, Kathy Whitaker went out into the back garden and spoke to her black gardener. The photographer took it, and in this piece it says Kathy Whitaker, friends to, I think the actual words is friend to the Negroes, because it's set in, so they're using language that from that period. And so immediately already they are defining her as someone different because she's wearing something different. The lilac scarf says this is someone who stands out a little bit differently. Now, the lilac scarf, to me, you could tell the story of the film just from the lilac scarf. If we talk about Kathy Whitaker or Julianne Moore is the protagonist, certainly the lilac scarf could be described as the storyteller. So if we switch on, these are from different parts of the film. So there she is reading the newspaper in the top left. She's reading the article, and then at that particular, just after that, there's a gust of wind and the lilac scarf is blown up over the house. And what's interesting is blown up over the house, So you could say the lilac is about daydreams. So the action of the scarf is, in a way, already setting the scene for telling the story of Kathy. After her friends go away, she goes round to the back garden, and there she meets the gardener holding the lilac scarf. And he says, I thought this was yours. The color just felt right. Now, the only time we see the lilac scarf in this film is whenever it is connected to the gardener. And she, if you've not seen the film, so her husband, Julian, Kathy Whittaker's husband, is Dennis Quaid, and he's caught actually having an affair or having an encounter with a man in his office. So the marriage is a bit kind of obviously on the rocks, or in difficulty. They go to conversion therapy, as it's called then, and he agrees. But all the time she is connected to the gardener, because she speaks to him, she talks to him, which goes totally against, let's say, the current time and what's supposed to happen. Based on the era, it's the only time the lilac scarf shows up. Lilac does play a part. So the lilac is telling a story of who Kathy Whittaker is. Now, when she goes with her husband to see the psychiatrist, she's waiting for him outside. And as you see, there's still lilac there, but equally, this time there's a bit of blue. You can't quite see it, but her hat in the film is also lilac. So there's still that purple there. So it's still her. But what I love about this particular scene is there's the scene where we first see her standing outside waiting for her husband, and it's in the shadow. And then brilliantly, the sunlight comes and it lights up her face. But then we follow, the camera then turns to show us what she's actually looking at. And in a way, what symbolically lit up her face. And here we see the couple sitting on the bench, and the color of the woman sitting on the bench or the girl sitting on the bench is the identification. Color is sometimes, remember what I said, is about identification. The blue and the blue, different shade of blue. But equally, what's really interesting is look at the shadow on the tree. Now, the shadow on the tree, if it was a shadow on the tree of the couple, you would see part of that she's actually, they're kissing. But the shadow on the tree is only her. So it's that color that is the identification. So the blue and blue. Okay. And then we go through, and then this is one of the last scenes towards the end of the film. And this time, the lilac scarf is just tightly tied around her head. So it's almost like symbolizing fantasies and daydreams. Yep. But you can't get swept off your feet because basically she's lost her husband. She's equally lost there's trouble with her best friend. Let me just quickly go back to. So as you will see, her best friend is wearing this kind of yellowy green coat. Now, this color in color therapy, color psychology, color symbolism has an aspect of certain poisonness to it. So just in this scene, and certainly if you look at theater lighting as well, you will see that this kind of yellowy green is always when there's going to be something. A relationship is not pure. There's something that's not exact about the relationship. So if we looked at this perfectly at the beginning of the film and looked at the color of her coat, yes, we know she's her best friend, but we know at some point in the film there's going to be a disrupt in their friendship, which well, it's worth seeing the film because there is, but you have to see the film to actually know why there is. And just saying that, so I haven't got any shots from it, but if you've seen the film La La Land, and I can't remember the characters' names, but you'll know Ryan Gosling goes to his girlfriend's kind of house. They go for dinner. They go or he goes there for dinner. And if you pay attention to the light coming through the window, which to everyone else would just be evening light coming through the window, but pay attention to the color of the light coming through the window, and it's got that yellowy green tone, and it's literally just after that, within a few seconds after that, they have this huge bust up. So there is this idea, and again, if you look at kind of watch theatre, where obviously colored lighting is used a lot, again, they use color to actually enhance and tell the story. So moving on from this, that's that one. Oh yes, now I want to go back to, we might think I have a thing about lilac, but I don't, it just seems to. So famous scene, famous part of a film, Singing in the Rain from 1952. Now, if you watch the whole Singing in the Rain of Gene Kelly dancing down the street, singing in the rain, pay attention to the color. I think this is probably, like obviously in the 1950s with all the what was allowed to be shown on screen and what was not. This was probably the best symbolism of that. The whole Singing in the Rain scene was probably one of the best symbolism of a love scene in comparison to what we have today. So here we are. This is the point where they're saying goodnight. It's with yep. And then obviously if you watch the sequence, it then goes into him singing in the rain. Now, these are some of the scenes. The first part is the one in the top right, and it goes in that sequence: top right, left, bottom left, right. Now, red. Okay, we know, we can think of red, we think of passion, we think of excitement, we think of immediacy, and equally look at in the film, in the scene, the red is quite prominent, and also you might say in a way it's quite symbolic, it's quite phallic. But we then follow on from that, and in every shop window when he's dancing down the street, there was always yellow and violet. The same, go back, exactly the same shade and tone as Debbie Reynolds is wearing here. If you watch it in slow motion, literally in the shop window where it says bookstore, there's the yellow and the violet. Here in the one in the top left, there's the yellow. And then gradually, and this scene in the bottom right-hand corner, look at the size of the symbol of red. And this is probably about the last few seconds of this particular scene, of that particular song. And so it's a bit like what they can't say, and it's that we do exactly the same thing. What we can't say consciously, we express through our likes and dislikes of color. And if you think about it, and where I pay attention to it and started paying attention to it in film, is because in a film we're telling a story, and in life we're telling a story. And let's say in a film, in a full length film, maybe we have 120 minutes or 90 minutes, probably let's say 90 minutes to tell the story of in the film. And we're consciously using colors to help enhance that visual narrative. And again, in our everyday life, we choose colors to enhance and tell our story. So, yes, right. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, because I want to know, do you have any questions so far? Because then I want to take it to we can play, because it's fine for me telling you, showing you all this. And equally, just before we come to that and I ask you a question, if you've seen the film Joker, with if you look at the scene where Joaquin Phoenix's character is following his neighbor to work, whilst firstly you may notice that whilst the film is in color, there's no the colors are all cool tone, blue tone. There's no warmth to any of the colors at all, which enhances the story and the environment. But equally, if you pay attention specifically to the scene where he is following his neighbor, the lady, to work, what you will notice in all the time he's following her, and it's a very short scene, there is no red, apart from the skirt that his neighbor is wearing. So in that scene, there's and so you're unconsciously, you're looking at the red is saying this is the whole point of his intention. So his intentions are very clear by the colors that they've used and not used and where they've placed them. Any questions so far? Any questions or any comments? Obviously, you work in it. You work with film. You know film. You kind of say, I'm curious from your perspectives as well, how you color. And then we're going to do a little bit of play with color. John, you're on. I can see you're on a mute.
I think it was interesting what you said. I never even considered that, as far
Yeah.
as, especially with the red and lilac. It's just, but when you pointed it out, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, it's what I say is, it's the difference between watching a film and seeing a film. So sometimes I encourage my students to actually choose a favorite film and then watch. We literally switch off the sound and just pay attention to the colors, even just for even if it's just for a couple of minutes, just pay attention, certainly at the points where there's dramatic change. Like, for example, if you again, if you look at a scene from Breaking Bad, and I think it's where he's about to tell his wife about who he really is. There's one particular scene where he says, "Don't you know who I am?" It's like and if you look, he's wearing a red shirt. It's a kind of burgundy red. It's kind of a friendly red. And then as he starts to tell her who he is, he takes off his shirt and he's wearing almost like a blood red, when there's lots of blood, t-shirt. So it's almost like just in that action, he's gone from family man to this is who I really am. It's so subtle, but it's such a quick change. It changes his whole demeanor and character just by that. It's the same. So it's both. It's red. It's still using red, but different shade and tone of it. And I'll if you look, there's a particular scene, and it's if you watch that particular one, you'll see the subtle change. But yeah, try
So do
watching.
you think you can like win people's hearts and minds using color then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like even in like documentaries?
So some about 10 or 11 years ago, I was working with a director, and we were talking about this, and she was doing a short, and so we put a film story. So she told me the story, like what was and it was a story about experiencing different dancers and how it affected her. And she told me the story of the protagonist, and I said, okay, let me translate that into a color story. And then whoever, I think, is it the editor or producer, whoever works with the color, I then gave him the color story, and then he added in a little bit more color, reduced certain colors in different frame by frame, and then we showed the two versions to an audience on a big screen. It was at the BFI, and we showed one not without the color story, and it was like, yep, okay, great. Then we showed them the second one, and we asked them about their experience, and they said with the second one, they felt they'd lost the sense between the screen and themselves. They felt they were fully in the almost like in the film. There was no separation. And I think that's what really kind of kept me. And then what I did with the students in down in Mexico is, instead of actually, because like Disney use color all the time, they say, okay, this is the character, and then they dress the character based on the character, based on the character, who the character is, and they use the colors to actually then style the character. But what we were doing in Mexico is we were doing things the other way around. Instead of actually adding the color after we'd got the character, we started with the colors to create the characters. So
Wow,
because
it's amazing to create a character out of color like that.
yeah, I mean, you could say that. I mean, they play. What was that? Do you remember that the Pixar film called Inside Out? If you kind of like, where there were different voices inside the young girl's head. It was an animation where there was red was anger, kind of the gold was joy. What was it? Violet was very much that the fear. Blue.
I remember that. Yeah, that was a good film. Yeah.
I mean, there they very much played into the, let's say, the common associations, like red with anger, and I think green was disgust or something like that. But they played into, but this is the other way around, because like I said to you, I work in psychodrama. Psychodrama is always, if you've ever done kind of like role play in kind of Gestalt, or where you consider what it is from the other perspective, kind of in the sense, that's what psychodrama is. Psychodrama is about role reversal. And so I can see things it's about building relationships. So when someone says, like I said to you, I hate yellow, that's why I would say, well, yellow might hate you too. And it's almost like, what would happen if you actually gave color a voice, a shape, a character, and a personality? It's a way of creating narrative. It's creating a whole script. It's like saying, well, okay, red, orange, purple, and yellow all decided to go to a coffee shop. And then what happened next? So thinking about it is, so if you had to choose a color, okay, think of it like this. Let's play it a little bit. So if you had to think about one of your favorite colors, what color would it be?
Green.
Okay. John?
I was going to say green too.
Okay.
Literally.
But I'm curious.
Brown would be my backup. Yeah.
Okay.
Green.
Yep. Okay. But I'm very curious, because equally, it's what green are you thinking of, John?
Nature.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. For you too.
Mine's like lime green.
Yep. So it's exactly that, because when people say, oh, I love this color, I know that equally when someone says, I hate this color, I know that they're thinking of a very specific shade or tone. Because if you looked on the color spectrum if you look on the color spectrum of green, there's so many shades and tones of color of green. Likewise, yellow or red or any color, there's so many different shades and tone. Light rose pink, lilac-y type colors. Okay. Yep. And then how would you describe them? How would you describe them if you're surrounded by that? How does it make you feel? Random thoughts. What if you imagine it?
Happy.
Yep. Anything else?
Energized.
Less
Just
of a feeling, more like, I don't know, kind of like pinky, pretty colors.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's so superficial,
No, no,
but
no. Nope.
kind of makes me kind of feel like, oh wow, they're like pretty, beautiful colors.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And what about for you, John? What about your green? How does it make you feel?
It's peaceful, yeah, just because nature. I'm on,
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
love it.
Yep. All right. What about what about dislike? And this is
Purple.
beyond. This is okay. Yep. Okay. And it can be.
Dislike.
It's about. It's not. Sometimes it's not so much about wearing it, because obviously, we can't. Some colors we don't wear because we just think no, 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 no. This is beyond wearing it, decorating with it. Is there a color you just think no? And if you're unsure about it,
Yeah.
just imagine if you really kind of say, well, is it this color? Is it that color? Just think about, how would I feel if I was to sit in a room of that color? Literally, where I can already see what that kind of like, thinking about how would you feel if you're sitting in a purple room? Literally, when I say a purple room, literally the floor, the ceiling, the walls.
My floor is lilac, by the way. It is purple.
Oh.
And so is my jumper and my exercise
No,
mat
I
and
think
like my bed sheet. So yeah.
so. But Thadia, what kind of purple are you thinking of?
Like a lot of them.
Okay, all right, okay. How would you feel though?
I'd feel quite sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that just in your response, that's how immediate it is when you start paying attention to it, because it creates such a visceral physical response that, and it's so subtle. Okay, we're paying attention to it, but think about if you're looking at it on a screen, you're having a subtle response. Your body is changing and reacting to what the colors that you're seeing on the screen, which is coming back to your question, Thadia, is, kind of, can you have that whole feeling? Yes. But then, okay, so Thadia, if you don't mind playing with this a little bit more. Okay. Imagine, let's play for a minute, as if you were purple, as if you were the voice of purple. Suddenly you were the spokesperson for purple. How would you be? So imagine we're doing a bit like, one of these hot talk show hosts, and Thadia is sitting in this side of the audience saying, "Oh, I don't like purple. Oh, um, Najera is sitting there saying, "Yes, I love it," and they say, "Okay, purple, let's give you a voice." What would your first reaction be? What's your first response? As if you were purple.
Oh, why don't you like me?
Yep. Tell me about you. Tell me a little bit more about you. Forget what everyone else says. Let's just do an interview with you. We'll come back to what everyone has said in a minute. How do you feel
Wait,
if
so
if you were purple?
if I was the color purple, what would I say?
Yeah. How would you be? Just tell me a little bit about you.
Oh, feeling the way I feel about purple
No,
now.
imagine if you are just purple.
Oh, I just feel like uh like it was unfair or victimized or something. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
why don't you like me?
Okay, so that was saying that, but how do you feel? How do you, as purple, how do you feel about yourself? That's what other people are telling you.
Oh, how do I feel? I don't know how to answer that. Can you give, because can
Yep.
you?
Yep. So you might kind of say, well, as purple. Okay, start with this. Is how do you feel if you were, okay, play it like this. If you were a character, if you had to personify yourself as a character, what kind of character would you be as purple?
The villain,
Okay. Yep. Yep. What kind of villain?
the 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 bitter villain.
Okay. Yep.
So I'd be bitter and
Yep.
I wouldn't have any belief or faith in humanity.
Mhm. Male, what would you be if we were really kind of personifying male, female, young, old?
I'd just be a male superhero that just wanted to kill the planet or something.
Okay. All right. So there we go. Just as literally as soon as you go into it, you can, and that taps into in Jung's term, he talked about the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious. As soon as we give a color to something, when we start saying, okay, what kind of shape does it have? What kind of person? If you were to personify it, kind of, and what's interesting, without you saying, oh, well, purple would be this superhero. One of the symbolic aspects in archetypal psychology with violet and purple, it's always kind of something like something which has to do with the world. It's bigger than normal life. It's kind of so that's what is because you're not naming it, the person taps into it just by becoming it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So if we started there and then you would say, okay, so if you were doing the same with green,
Green.
what kind of person would you be?
John, you do it.
Okay, yes, John. Come on, John. Well, if you were green, how would you personify green?
Wholesome, warm, inviting,
Yeah.
Non-judging, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And kind of it as a person, would you be male, female, young, old?
Male.
Yeah.
40s.
Yep.
Because at that point you would know more than you would in your 20s.
Yep. Yep.
So that's why you don't get angry and things. Yeah. You just like you exist, you understand why other people exist and why they think the way they do.
Yep.
And you're not judging for that.
Yep.
Because
Okay.
they're young.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And what's interesting about your description of green, part of green is in the psychology and the symbolism of green. It's about non-judgment and about being open. It's heart-based because it's nature. Think of the terms Mother Nature. So everything happens in its own right time for its right reason, etc.
So I said it right.
Yeah. Simply. So you could just buy like this. Here we have the beginning of a story. Here we have two characters.
Nice.
You kind of, and then thinking about, so then you could take it on one step further. And then what I would do is then I would say, well, okay, so imagine these characters are then having a conversation. So Fina, what would the villain say to you?
I'm gonna destroy all your trees.
Okay. So what would he say? Would he say that to you? So then you can make them then you can kind of say, okay, so what would he say to, okay, what would he say to me if he's talking to you directly?
What would he say? What would the villain say to me?
Yep.
Oh, the villain would say, oh, I'm very blocked right now. Give me a lead on how.
Yep.
Give me
Okay.
an example.
Yep. Yeah. So you might kind of, so let's say if you were looking, so you might say, okay, I'm feeling blocked right now. And the villain might kind of then, it's like, well, okay, have you got something to do with this? You might be asking the villain, is like, so have you got something to do this? Are you what's blocking me?
Oh, okay. Is it your fault, right?
Yep.
That I'm feeling blocked.
Yep. Because he's a superhero. It seems to be.
Well, he's probably done some kind of frequency thing, invisible frequency thing to like cause this issue. So
okay. Yep. So we need someone who's understanding and there's
Hmm.
got a green character.
And healing.
Yes, some healing.
Hmm.
So from that perspective, you can kind of then start telling us, you can look, well, you can add in different colors and say, well, okay, there's two characters. What other colors what other color would I bring in here? Who, and just say, just allow them to emerge spontaneously. Because I think of the way I explain in modern day terms, the collective unconscious, it's just like saying, have this great big story cloud. It's like this great big, we have kind of like iCloud. This is like the collective, Jung's collective unconsciousness, which is, from his perspective, holds all the stories from the beginning of time. Is literally, we can tap into it. It's like a memory cloud. It's a big memory cloud.
That's amazing. That's like you looking at rainbows helped you tap into this collective unconscious. You knew all the colors, and then you were able to write this script effortlessly.
Yep. Because you're letting them tell the story. Your job is just to translate that.
Who would have thought about any of this? This is like so new. I've never heard of this.
It's a lot of fun. And then like I said at the beginning, that's why I kind of like, I would love to go back to speak to some of my kind of teachers at school when they say, oh, Mark would do so much better if he didn't have such an overactive imagination. And it's like, nope. I needed that active imagination to do this. Yeah, so you can use them. Sorry, you were going to say something, John?
Yeah, I was going to say, most of us don't have your level of imagination. Would you suggest then, as we're writing these characters, we're keeping colors in mind?
Yep, absolutely. Kind of, and I have is almost like just pieces of color. So I have little kind of like felt colored balls, and almost like, and I say, okay, so this one's going to be this, and then I have them around, and almost like tell the story by moving them around. But it's the way to me, the way to tap into that imagination is to literally become the other and literally switch seats. Because what they found in the neuroscience with kind of role reversal is when we switch roles and imagine how it is to be in someone else's shoes, it lights up the part of the brain which is connected to compassion. So it's kind of in the sense, because then it gives the whole meaning of, then I know what it's like to step into someone else's shoes. And it also lights up the part of the brain connected to imagination, because literally I can imagine how it is to step into someone else's role. I can see it from that perspective. And so it's, but for the first bit, I would definitely recommend is choose any film and just pay attention to any films that you have. Do you kind of, and just watch without, if there's no sound, just pay attention to the colors without sound. And just look, and certainly at the in that film, kind of in the film Far From Heaven, if you look at the use of lilac all the way through, like they kind of go down to, he's been to therapy and says, yes, it's all working fine. And let's go away for New Year. They go down to Florida. And all the time she's got a lilac swimsuit on. So, it's almost like fantasy. It's almost like a false sense of reality. And then something happens. But if you pay attention to the scene when they arrive back home, and they arrive back home, and it all looks like a happy family scene, except right in the center of the shot, there is this red plant, this red poinsettia, bright red. So it's like all happy families, but the red says, yeah, but not for too long. So it's worth kind of looking at the film and paying attention for that. It's such a brilliant, but look at Joker, and how they've used, like I said, they use totally cool tone. And you kind of play around with that sense of intensifying colors. What happens if I take out this color, or I intensify that color? If you have that, with the editing, what happens when I reduce this shade or I increase this one? How does it change the story or the character? But from the point of view of beginning process, start with a color instead of the other way around. Let the color, that you'll find it will become so much easier. Let the color tell the story. So I hope this has been somewhat interesting and kind of, and just pay attention. Look at the, even from the film, just pay attention to the colors that you have around you. Why do I have these colors? Why do I choose this colors? Like, even on that day-to-day basis, why do I choose, the simple thing is like you can wear one color and people say, wow, that's amazing, you look great, you feel great, and yet you try to wear it again another time, it doesn't feel right, doesn't look right. It's like kind of a weather forecast, but an internal weather forecast. And it's like I said, all the time we're telling a story through the colors we choose, even though, and the reason people don't pay attention because it's around there all the time. But if you become more color conscious and then think what happens in film, we're constantly telling our life story through the colors we choose. In marketing, people choose the main 92% of the decision making on things we buy is based on color, because we all have a story that we're telling about ourselves, about who I want to be, where I'm going to, what is my life story, and we choose the colors and the brands which support the me that I'm going to become.
So when you change your color choices, does it just mean you're just evolving in your character then?
Yeah. So kind of like sometimes, like I said, in some of the stuff I did do on TV was about going to couples who were thinking about living together or getting married, so they're going to be living together for the first time. My part was to go and look at all the colors they had in their respective homes to see good match or not, and who was really, what was really going on because it's a sense of what we can't say consciously, we will speak unconsciously through the colors we choose. And that's why, kind of equally with some of the, like, let's say people on celebrities, famous people, whatever, is you can always, when there's been a major breakup or whatever, if you look at the colors they've been wearing up to 3-4 months beforehand, you all can always see who was the one who really left the relationship or what happened before it broke the news. Because it's almost like using the example is, when you go to the cinema, they all show preview of forthcoming attractions. It's the same with color, like you can have like you said, Theda, is sometimes you can suddenly have your color range and you start noticing a color that you've never been drawn to before. You kind of think, I really need this, or I want this color more. I've never been drawn to that color before. You use it in your work or whatever. It's that whole thing is like a preview of life's forthcoming attractions. That's why sometimes, but I don't get many dinner invitations, or if I do, people want to blindfold me because they say we've just done we've just redecorated and we don't want you to look at the colors.
So you can tell people what they're feeling or what's going on based on the colors they're wearing. Is it on that level?
On some level, because the colors you choose have a different kind of to everyone. And so I'm always saying to people, don't choose the colors you're going to wear the night before. Because how you were feeling the night before, let's say you then go to sleep and have a really bad dream, the colors then you might not suit how you feel
Mm.
And so always it's a whole different, when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes a whole new world.
So
Hmm.
if you can just touch on that a little bit, because I wanted to go back what you said about one day you're wearing a color and the next day it looks like crap on you.
Yep.
Because I experience this all the time. I go,
Yeah.
I used to love this shirt. Why doesn't it look good? Are you saying that's because of my mood at the time?
Yep, there's kind of something happening on that kind of unconscious level. So when I talk about the weather forecast, it's like kind of like an emotional weather forecast.
Wow. I got to pay attention to that next time.
Yeah.
Because I literally, this just happened to me yesterday.
Oh,
I
okay.
said, okay, I'm going to wear this shirt,
Yep.
and I went and looked in the mirror just to make sure it was straight. I go, oh, I don't like this. Oh, this looks nasty,
Yep.
And nothing had changed about the shirt. It's just,
Yes,
I did not like
exactly.
it.
Yep. Yep. Exactly what you've
Wow.
just said, John. Nothing changed about the shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that I think you only said we were supposed to be talking for an hour, so apologies about that.
No, it's coming up to an hour, isn't it?
Oh,
we got over an hour.
Wow. It's 10 to.
Oh wow, that's been really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
That's been fascinating. We're going to share this with all the people. I'm sure there's going to be complaints to me as usual about the times. I usually get that after, because it's a very common thing for me to do this. So, but I'll just share it with those people.
Yep. Yeah.
That's been really fascinating.
And what I'll do is I'll upload it to I'll upload it to Google, and then I'll share it with the link.
Okay, yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. So you'll have to go around and have a look at color in a different way now.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah,
okay. Great.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Have a great one, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I hope to actually be joining some of the meetup groups as well.
Great.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I'd love to.
We'll see you then. Yeah, that'll be great. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Thank
See you
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.